Welcome back to the Patriots podcast. I am your host, Sal Assante, and today we are going to be talking about the Second Amendment. Really going to be the last real show that we have for the year. I'm going to keep it short and sweet, or at least try to. A little shorter and sweeter than I did last week, so try to keep it around a 10-minute show and just keep it brief. I know the holidays are around. Not everybody's got a ton of time, so hope you guys enjoy this episode. Let's get right into the good stuff. So with this last episode, first of all, Merry Christmas to all of you that are celebrating. Happy holidays to the rest of yous. This is really the last real one. We'll have one more episode recapping 2025. Should be out the last week of the year here. So with all that said, the Second Amendment, why is it so important? Well, the real main reason, to me at least, is that it protects the First Amendment. And I know the First Amendment is something that we speak about quite constantly on this show here, but I just wanted to detail it. I know I've done this before, but just read it out for all of you so that way you have it in your head. So the First Amendment reads, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or of the right of the people to peaceably assemble, and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. Now, the Second Amendment reads, a well-regulated militia, being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. So, why do I think that the Second Amendment is important to protect the First? Well, with no ability of the citizens to defend themselves against a tyrannical government, there is no way to have free speech. You can write it down on a piece of paper, much like all of our laws today, but what is the enforcement? Well, the enforcement comes from the people who have a right to bear arms, and not the funny meme where you see the right to having bear arms like the animal. No, quite literally to own weapons. And that ability in and of itself is a check on the government for overreaching its power. Now, the Second Amendment does protect that First Amendment, of course, but it also does a lot of other things. Number one, as written in there, the right of the people to have a militia is very important. That means that the government itself is not wholly responsible for defending the homeland. And that goes with, of course, outside threats, but it also quite clearly, even denoted in the text itself, is talking about defending itself from a tyrannical government of its own making, right? So if our government was to be going out of its way to tyrannize its own citizens, well, the ability of the citizens to own and operate firearms at their free will is a check on that. And I think that it's got to be kept in mind by all of us, we the people here, that we have that right and we should be exercising it. Now, it's also important, I would say, too, in the sense of just protecting oneself and one's family. And that is where a lot of the laws that I think that have infringed upon the Second Amendment have come about. You know, whether you're talking about the law of the, I don't know if it's actually codified in exact law. I should probably look into this, but essentially someone is robbing your house, doing it with a weapon, and you shoot them while they are running away. You are going to get charged in most cases like that. Discharging their weapon while somebody who has just destroyed your property, stolen your property, whatever. And just because they're not facing you, you're facing a charge. There's also a lot of instances where people are just defending their home, defending their property, or defending their family, and they are the ones, by using firearms, they are the ones actually getting charged with a crime rather than the person who broke in and entered. I think it's very important that we have that law on the books. That should not matter, and that is an infringement in and of itself. But the infringement that I want to talk about, you go back to that text and it says the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. However, we've seen countless times just in the past 100 years of infringement being one of the first steps that our government takes in order to limit the ability of the citizens. And I just want to kind of run through a few of those. So the first one that is glaring, of course, you have something like the Rhode Island machine gun ban in 1927, and a lot of states followed suit with that. But more importantly, in 1934, you have the National Firearms Act, the NFA. It imposed taxes, registration requirements for the weapons, and regulations on Title II weapons, such as machine guns, short-barreled shotguns, accessories like suppressors or explosives. And what the point of it was to try to limit or even prohibit the gang violence that was running rampant at the time. But like we see with a lot of these enactments of infringement on the Second Amendment, you may hurt the people that you're trying to hurt, but in most cases, you're actually hurting the law-abiding citizenry, and that is an issue because, and I will say this time and time again, when you are writing a law in order to make things illegal, well, people who are committing things like gang violence or murders, they are already not abiding by the law. So writing a new law into place is actually not going to stop most of them. What it's going to stop is the law-abiding citizens from being able to defend themselves against these people. The Federal Firearms Act in 1938 actually kind of furthered that NFA, required licensing for gun manufacturers, importers, dealers, banned sales to felons, and prohibited persons, quote unquote. Now, inherently, I don't really have an issue with stopping or disallowing felons, known felons, convicted felons from owning a firearm. In a lot of cases, especially if they are violent felons, that might make sense. What I have an issue with, again, is limiting the access to law-abiding citizens. Now, another thing that is, for example, I know probably a lot of you have seen the recent episode of Jelly Roll going on to Joe Rogan's podcast and explaining how he has no ability to have access to a weapon because of felonies that were committed decades ago by him, and looking to redress that and get back some of his rights. There should be, in my opinion, an ability for a felon or anybody, quite honestly, to redeem themselves if they are displaying good behavior, if they are not not against society in any way, especially at this point. It's been decades. There should be a way to redeem oneself and be able to get their rights back, because the one thing that prohibits someone for, codified in law, that you're going to lose your rights that are laid out in the Bill of Rights. The one sure and true way in order to do that, in order to get your rights taken away, is to be a felon. And I don't disagree with that. I think that, we need to protect ourselves. We need to protect our society. And those restrictions make sense. If you're a law-abiding citizen, you have quite a bit of rights that are granted to you. If you are not a law-abiding citizen or have a history of going against the law, especially committing something like felony, especially violently, then you should have your rights stripped away. Now, should obviously still have your ability to speak up and defend yourself, but being able to defend yourself with a weapon, if you've already displayed use of that in a sense that's not defensive and is actually aggressive, I think that should be taken away from you. So again, I'm not arguing that, but making it harder for the law-abiding citizen to defend themselves is an issue. Now, you have plenty of affirmations of the NFA and the Federal Firearms Act that kind of just codify what actually was already put into law. Gun Control Act of 1968, following the assassination of JFK, MLK, and RFK, banned mail order guns, prohibited sales to felons again, mentally ill, drug users, and others in that realm. And this is what required gun serialization. So, the serial number that you're going to find on every legal weapon now. Now, again, no issue with limiting the access to people who have committed wrongs, but when you're talking about limiting the access to law-abiding citizens is where I actually see the biggest issue. You have places like gun-free school zones. This was enacted in 1990. This is one of the biggest issues that I actually have in terms of infringing on the Second Amendment, because creating a gun-free zone, forget about being a school zone, just anywhere, creating a gun-free zone is like putting a poster out there and saying, there is nobody in here who can defend themselves. It is, in my opinion, what led to us having such an epidemic of mass shootings and school shootings and the like, is that nobody in the schools is having a weapon in order to defend the children and the defenseless. And again, you're kind of just putting out a poster for the people who are looking to do horrible things and saying this is a place where you can commit those acts of atrocity. I think that this is a major infringement on the Second Amendment. And again, I point back to that Bill of Rights where not only has our government gone against that text of our Bill of Rights to not infringe, but they actually blatantly do it. And again, you look at something like the 1994 federal assault weapon ban, where under Bill Clinton, um, assault style rifles were banned. And the argument that was made and is still made today when people talk about an assault weapon ban is that you're banning the gun based on how it looks and not what it actually is going to perform like. You could have something that looks like a hunting rifle, but it's semi-automatic. It can do the same thing that an AR-15, so to speak, can do, and you're just banning it because it looks scary. And all in all, we have many more recent acts that are changing stuff based on a little bit more local and not federal issues. But at the end of the day, the point that I'm trying to get across here is that our own government does not really seem to care about our Bill of Rights, does not really care about our Second Amendment. And if anything, they've limited us to, as the law-abiding citizen, to a secondary class of gun ownership. And it's screaming out to me that we are in a place right now where we can be tyrannized as the public. Of course, you can make that everyday argument that someone who is anti-gun is going to say that you don't need to own guns because our military owns tanks, they have missiles, they have planes, all this shit. Well, if I was to honestly take it to its extreme, and I would, if you're a law-abiding citizen and have combat experience or have the ability to prove that you can operate a tank, you can operate a plane, you should be able to own that. That being able to defend our citizenry from a tyrannical regime run by our own country is the whole name of the game when it comes to the Second Amendment. It's not for hunting. It's not for self-defense against robbers, even though that definitely plays a part in it. As written in the law, it is for stopping our own government from tyrannizing us. So why is the Second Amendment important? Of course, it is protecting the First Amendment. It is protecting our citizenry. But above all, we're protecting ourselves from our government, making us into a bunch of blind sheep. And the sooner that we can get back to that, the safer of a society I think we'll have. The less incidents you'll see that happen all over the New York City subway system where you have random stabbings and stuff like that. If criminals knew that the average citizen is armed and is willing to use it in order to defend themselves and the public and their family, you would see a lot less crime. More places where you see that there are bans on weapons, you're not allowed to own a weapon, you're not allowed to carry a weapon out in public, the higher the crime rate, generally speaking, is going to be. And again, I point back to those mass shootings and school shootings, church shootings, synagogue shootings. All of this are places where guns are not allowed. When you have these places, it is just a shining red bullseye for people who want to commit very dark things. So I say, as the people, as we have the ability to control who we are putting into Congress, who we are electing to the presidency, and who we're electing to local politics, let's get back on track to allowing our Bill of Rights to shine through rather than limiting people because we think that it's scary. Because at the end of the day, protecting our democratic republic and representative republic and defending our way of life as Americans comes with a cost. And that cost is the fact that, the average citizen's going to own a scary thing, but if we own these scary things, then bad people can't do bad things to us. That's all I got for you today. Hope you guys have a wonderful holiday, and I will catch you guys in person at the start of 2026. Love you all. Thank you for tuning in. Catch you guys later.
I wish I were the fucking state. I want to be something, not nothing. Trapped inside my dream and I'm running away from these demons. But the feeling's so good, I'ma keep dreaming.